Today we'll be reading Chapter 5 of The Mouse and the Motorcycle. When we left off in Chapter 4 last week, Ralph was zooming around on the carpet on the motorcycle. Chapter 5 Adventure in the Night. When Ralph had mastered riding the motorcycle on the threadbare carpet, he went bump over the roses on the less worn parts under the dresser and on the bedside table. That was fun too. "Hey," he whispered to the boy, "come on out where I can see you." Vroom, vroom. Ralph shot out into the moonlight, and he stopped, sitting on the motorcycle with one foot resting on the floor. "Say," he said, "how about you let me take this out into the hallway? You know, just go for a spin, see how fast it'll go." "Promise you'll bring it back?" asked Keith. "Scout's honor," answered Ralph, who had picked up many expressions from children who stayed in room 215. "Okay, I'll tell you what," said Keith. "You can use it at night, and I'll use it in the daytime. I'll leave the door open an inch so you can get in. That way, you ride it up and down the halls at night." "Can I really?" This was more than Ralph could hope for. "Where do you want me to park it when I come in?" he asked. "Someplace the maid's not going to step on it," answered the boy. "Well, that's easy. Under the bed. She never cleans under there." "Yeah, I know," answered Keith. "I looked. There's a lot of dust mice under there." "Please," Ralph was pined. "Oh, sorry," said the boy. "That's what my mother calls a bunch of dust fluffs under the bed." "My mother doesn't," said Ralph. "Now how about you open the door?" The boy put on his hand on the doorknob. "You won't let anything happen to my motorcycle, will you?" he asked. "You know I wouldn't let anything happen to a beauty like this," said Ralph. "See that you don't, and don't stay out too late." The boy opened the door and permitted Ralph to put him out into the dim light of the hallway. Ralph had a scary feeling he was on the threshold of adventure. There was no beds, no chairs for him to dart under and hide in case of danger. The floor was creaking, and someone was snoring in room 214 across the hall. Outside in the pines, an owl hooted, sending prickles up his back. Ralph controlled his trembling of his paws while he hesitated outside the door and considered the possibility of the halls, which was carpeted all the way down the center, leaving two smooth highways of bare floor on either side along the baseboards. It didn't take him long to decide what to do. He picked up his tail, took a deep breath, and bent low over the handlebars. He flattened his ears and sped down the straightway as fast as the motorcycle would go. He would feel his whiskers sweep back by the force of the speed. It was glorious. Ralph had never ventured out so far from home before. The old wooden hotel, cooling in the night air, snapped and creaked, but Ralph was brave. He was riding the motorcycle. He passed room 213. He ran out of breath, letting momentum carry him past the other noisy snorer in room 211 and down the hall to the elevator, the mysterious elevator that carried people to that wonderful place Ralph had heard so much about, the ground floor. When Ralph came to the stairs, he stopped and looked down. Knowing it was impossible to ride a motorcycle downstairs, and at the same time wishing he could see for himself what lay below, he sniffed the air, and it seemed to him it smelled of strange foods he had never heard of. Cinnamon buns with sticky frosting, turkey stuffing, pancakes with maple syrup. A ray of moonlight from the window glinted on the glassy eye of the mounted deer head over the stair landing, and sent Ralph down the hall, past the broom closet and to the linen room, to the end of the hall, where he was exalted of a sharp turn, and he started back. Exhilarating speed, Ralph raced up and down. Once, when he heard some people getting out of the elevator, he had to duck behind a curtain at the window at the end of the hallway. And toward midnight, he passed his Aunt Sissy scurrying along the baseboard. He waved and nearly lost control of the motorcycle. Aunt Sissy stopped and stared at him for a minute. He was feeling quite pleased with himself, and at the same time sorry for Aunt Sissy. Poor frightened thing, she only had her feet to carry around from crumb to crumb. Up and down the halls he raced until especially noisy burst of speed outside of room 211. He was startled, and he heard a dog barking inside the room. Now it was Ralph's turn to be frightened. Oh, he thought, I better be careful. If there was one thing he disliked, it was people who traveled with dogs. Dogs always sniff around where they had no business sniffing. Once a dog had even barked into the mouse hole. It was days before Ralph's mother got over that. Ralph heard someone moving around inside room 211, and looking back over his shoulder, he saw the door open, and a tousled man in his bathrobe and slippers appeared carrying a little terrier. The man looked cross and sleepy, and he started down the hallway towards the elevator with his dog. He was walking straight towards Ralph. Vroom, vroom! He realized he was taking a chance, and Ralph sped up the motorcycle, and he turned and headed back to room 215. He would have to pass the man. It was better to continue towards the elevator and hope he could find a place to hide. He raced down the hallway. The wild barks of the little terrier told Ralph that he had been spotted by the dog, but not yet the man. Shut up, muttered the man to his dog. I'm going to walk you. You don't have to wake up the entire hotel. Ralph reached the elevator door, where he drove around behind the ashtray and on a stand behind the door. He stopped and waited, tense and frightened. Outside, the owl hooted and was silent, and he hooted again, and the sudden breeze rattled the windows and banged the doors, and Ralph's teeth began to chatter. The dog whimpered, but the man walked straight past Ralph, pushing a button, and in the moment stepped into the elevator. Phew, thought Ralph, when the elevator door had closed on the sleepy man and his noisy dog. Maybe he'd better lie low for a while. In a few minutes, the elevator returned to the second floor. As the man stepped out, the little dog looked over his shoulder, and he spied Ralph again behind the ashtray. Because the dog was captive and he was free, Ralph could not resist but stick out his tongue and wave his little paws in his ears as he gestured, as he had seen children gesture once in his room. He knew it would arouse some anger in the dog. Let me at him, barked the little terrier. Cut it out, grumbled the man, fumbling for the doorknob. Well, Ralph, daredevil now, rode a circle round the ashtray. He had felt a little cocky as he hadn't before. Who said mice were scared? Ha! When the mourning of the songbirds in the pines grew loud and the snores of the guests and the dawn slipped through the windows at the end of the hall, Ralph knew it was time to go back. Then there was a shock to discover. The door was shut. Only then did he recall the draft of the night had slammed the door. He got off the motorcycle. He pounded on the door with his fist. But what sleeping boy could hear a mouse beating on a door? Ralph knew from experience that he could flatten himself and crawl under the door, but there was no way he could get the motorcycle through the crack, not even by laying it on its side or pushing it. The handlebars were too wide. Ralph dismounted the motorcycle, sat down, leaned back against the baseboards, and prepared to guard the motorcycle until Keith awoke and discovered the door had blown shut. He was tired after the night and such a great excitement. Now that he had seen the hall, he could no longer be satisfied with just being in room 215. That's not enough. He longed to see the rest of the world, the dining room, the kitchen, the storage room, the garbage cans out back. He wanted to see the games room. He wanted to go outdoors. He wanted to brave the owls, and he wanted to hunt for his own seeds. Ralph was a growing mouse, but he needed rest. He fell asleep against the door, the motorcycle beside him. After the experiences of the night, he would never be the same. And the next thing he knew, Matt the bellboy was standing over him. Aren't you out pretty late? Matt asked him, causing Ralph to jump to his feet, even though he wasn't really awake. You should have been in bed a long time ago, but I suppose you were out till all hours of the night speeding around on that motorcycle. Ralph had seen Matt many times, but this was the first time the old man had ever spoke to him. He was astonished to discover that they spoke the same language. Even so, Ralph stood in front of the motorcycle. Anyone who tried to take it away from him would have to fight him first. Nice little machine you got there, remarked Matt. Kind of wish I was young enough to ride one myself. Must be fun speeding along, making all that noise. Ralph realized that Matt was a friend. Say, he began, how about you help a fellow out? Sure. What can I do for you? Could you open the door a crack? Just enough so I can ride through? I promised the boy I'd park the motorcycle. Under the bed. Good place, said Matt. Maid never cleaned under there. Very quietly, he turned the knob, opened the door just enough for Ralph to ride through. Ralph bumped up over the edge of the carpet, swung around the wastebasket into the bedside table, and was about to drive under the bed when, eek! Screamed the boy's mother, who was standing in the doorway in her bathrobe and her hair up in rollers. A mouse! Ralph put a burst of speed and shot under the bed. Where? Asked the boy's father, coming in. Under the bed. Oh, look, Mum, said the boy, and he jumped out of bed. Keith's face appeared and lifted the edge of the bedspread where Ralph sat trembling on the motorcycle. The boy held out his hand and beckoned. Ralph understood. He dismounted and ran up the boy's arm inside of his sleeve of his pajamas. Sorry, phone call. Until he came to the crook of his elbow. There he waited, shivering, to see what would happen next. Down at the end of the sleeve, he could see the boy's fingers close around the motorcycle. Then he felt himself being lifted as the boy rose from his hands and knees. It's just my motorcycle, Keith said. Yes, that's it, agreed his mother. The door opened and the mouse rode in. The boy's father began to laugh. You still dreaming? But I'm positive, insisted the boy's mother. That you saw a mouse on the little red motorcycle, finished the boy's father. He laughed even harder. You make it sound so ridiculous, said the mother. Well, the father kind of snorted with laughter. Well, I guess I was dreaming, she admitted reluctantly, but I did see a mouse. I'm positive, and I'm going to report it to management. I knew the minute we moved into this spooky old place that it had mice. Now I've done it, thought Ralph, and sighed the pajamas sleeves. And that's the end of chapter 5. Sorry for the phone call in the middle of that.